that you.
All right. This is These Old Farts again. Um, we're getting together to actually talk a little bit more about what's going on in the world. Specifically, the country is slowly beginning to reopen. Some parts obviously faster than others, but even in Massachusetts, things are beginning to reopen. Both Chuck and I heard from our dentist that they're going to be open Monday morning. So we're trying to talk about, is this a good thing, a bad thing? Do we really understand what reopening means? Not only physically what stores are open and who's going back to work, but what is its impact on the rest of the community? So that's where we're going to start, and we'll see what happens after that, obviously. As I was saying a moment ago, I just got an email saying that my dentist is opening on Monday. I don't know what else is opening up on Monday. I guess we're going to find out soon enough.
Did you hear, Bob, of any restrictions your dentist has? The procedure?
I don't think so. I'm trying to remember the email I got. And I think they want me to wear a mask, at least when I come in, and they want to limit the number of people sitting in the waiting room. So they definitely want you to come in for an appointment, as opposed to just wander in early or something. But I didn't notice anything else, but I didn't read it that closely because I'm not up for cleaning for a while.
The dentist for my wife and I said that you'd have to wait in your car. There was no letting anybody sit in the waiting room, and so you would be notified when to come in the room. There'll be no magazines or newspapers laying around for anybody to read. And then the other things as far as masks and things.
Yeah, I suppose that makes sense based on what we're learning as far as how to protect everybody else. The part I found interesting was that somebody was willing to get up close and look in my mouth, but then I started to think about what they used to wear even before this started, and they've got a lot of face mask filtering, and everybody's wearing gloves, etc., and a gown. So I suppose that they're about as safe as they can be. And I'm assuming that because of all the stuff they're wearing, I'm relatively safe too.
Yes, if they are wearing a mask.
Well, if they were wearing a mask before, why would they not be wearing a mask now? It probably depends on what quality.
Okay. All right. If I remember, when I went to the dentist, I don't know whether the dentist was wearing a mask because they had given me glasses to wear, and I couldn't see much. So I had my what is it called, the glasses on my eyes while they were working on my mouth, and I don't remember them wearing a mask, but maybe I don't remember.
Well, if you're like me, when I'm in the dentist chair, my eyes are shut as tight as they possibly can.
Yes, oh, that's why.
Got a grip on the handle.
Oh, okay. I thought I was alone. No, okay, good, because they had to give me 2 shots to numb my mouth because I started screaming. So,
well, I haven't screamed yet.
Okay. Oh, so
I've thought about it.
Oh, you thought about it. So only thing is, well, it's a good thing that they are what Chuck said. If they are letting people stay inside their car until they are ready, so that's a much better precaution actually. No magazines, no waiting room, no spreading the virus. So that sounds good. I mean, overall, we have to think about you have to let the economy be opened up. one way or the other. Have precautions in place, and what kind of precautions that means, I don't know yet. People are trying to talk about how you need the 6 feet distance, and you cannot have so many people together, and so that's where the restaurant thing, I don't know how that's going to work.
But we should know that by now. For no other reason, we've had Georgia open for 2 weeks, and a bunch of other states never closed.
And does Georgia have 6 foot policy too, or no? I didn't
I
read.
don't think so. I don't remember seeing anything that said that. But again, it's one of those things where all you heard about was they're opening up everything. You can have a tattoo parlor, you can have a massage. It turns out you could not go to a bar, interestingly enough, which I didn't know about until earlier this week.
So what is the rationale behind that one?
I don't know. I don't know why they chose what they chose. It would have seemed to me that the more dangerous ones were things like restaurants and bars, of course, because people are sitting there for a long time interacting with other people. Even with the 6 foot zone, if you're in a room long enough, the air is going to intermix.
That is the major issue, actually. If you are in a confined space, no matter how much farther you sit, if you have a lot of people, the air might get saturated. Well, it does get saturated. And then what do? Or is there enough air, what is it called, the refresh rate, to get rid of the extra particles? How fast? That's what planes have.
The thing with the bar is if you're that far away, they can't be selling many drinks, and it's probably not profitable to be open. You know, if you're in a bar, in order for the bar to make money, you have to be closer together.
Well, not necessarily, because given the fixed costs, rent, basic salaries to keep your bartenders and your key staff, if you're making nothing, you still have all these fixed costs. When you start getting into the variable costs, like for example, I have to have some temporary staff, I have to replenish my liquor when people buy it. That's relatively small, and I would think, I'm not a cost accountant, but I would think that having even a bar a quarter fill potentially would allow you to make a couple of dollars over and above just sitting there.
But that means you have to have the clients also have to be 6 foot apart, 6 feet apart. That means on a regular bar, maybe 4 people can sit, and they can't talk to each other. They are so far away. I mean, at the bar, usually people sit closer and hobnob and talk to each other and talk to the bartender. So that kind of conversation is not going to happen.
Well, if the bar itself is, and I'm not an expert at this, but let's say the bar itself is 2 feet, and there's another 3 or 4 feet behind that for the bartender to move around. That's relatively close, and if the person's wearing a mask, both sides are wearing a mask, although the person drinking is not going to have the mask on all the time, obviously.
You're not going to have the mask on while you're drinking.
Yeah, but you're not pouring this stuff down like it's a waterboard kind of thing. You're taking a drink and then you're putting it down and you're saying something and then you're taking another drink.
But your mask is off.
True.
And it's going to stay off for a long time. That's what one of the things what I was told is that the maximum time for while you are sitting at one place with no mask on
Hmm.
should be 15 minutes. I don't know how they came up with that number, but that's one of the things which was I was told somewhere else. But I don't know whether that is a number written in stone or not. And if that is the case, you remove the mask. Are you going to put the mask back on until you take a second sip?
The other complicating thing is the more you drink, the less inhibited you become,
Yes,
and much less likely to keep the mask on.
and much less likely to, much more likely to go and hug the person next door. No, not next door, next seat,
And talk more loudly.
and talk more loudly, more particles around. So that's an
Right.
interesting thing Paul brought up. That's good.
I,
Well,
I haven't heard anything about Georgia, the specifics either, but in Florida is a lot of part of Florida is really opened up also. I don't know if the restaurants are open. It'll be interesting to hear some of those information soon.
well, the restaurants are open. I sent you that stuff in email earlier in the week. And the part that I found amazing was that the numbers of new cases have gone down. Now the reopening is about 2 weeks old.
Yeah, I heard that too.
That's
So
good then.
if the numbers have gone down, maybe the incubation period is wrong, or maybe there's other factors we're not aware of.
Or maybe the infection, because there was a lockdown, so the number of people who were infected have just basically cleared the virus, or those people who were supposed to get sick, they got sick, so that there is no more new virus to infect other people. That's a possibility as well, because we don't understand a
Well,
whole
if
lot.
that be the case, then theoretically we can get away with reopening.
Yes, but nobody knows it. That's the thing.
Then the numbers that they're talking about going down are a reflection of what was in effect 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, that's another problem.
Right.
You don't see the immediate effect for another 2 weeks.
14 days, yeah.
Well, so it's been about 14 days, so I would have expected some
Yeah.
beginning of a reopening reaction, and maybe we'll see it next week. I don't know.
I mean, you would expect it in a 2.5 weeks, because the people have also, if somebody got sick, they're going to assess it at home or not get sick enough, or stay home and say everything is okay, I will be okay, and not report. I mean,
Yeah.
there is so many complications in the system built in the way it is.
I mean, there's obviously a lot.
They may not be tested.
Yeah, may not be tested.
Obviously, there's a lot of people relying upon science, but
Mhm.
still at the same time, there's an awful lot of guesswork about what really is the best way to do things.
There is a lot of guesswork, because not much is known about it, and the only thing we know now is probably the incubation period is 14 days, but with a median of 5.1 days. So, but that's all. It's basically based on data obtained from Italy, China, Korea, but the virus we got here is not the same virus which is in Wuhan. We got the virus mostly from Europe on this side, on East Coast. So that's kind of, you have to play with what is happening here. And the guess is that the 14 days is the incubation period.
Now, I've seen some broadcast on what's going on in Sweden as far as them socializing pretty heavily. And it looks like many of these people are at restaurants and bars and everything else. I just got some information on an article Monday in one of the newspapers saying that in Sweden, as of Monday, there's been 3,256 deaths based on their population of a little over 10 million.
Mm-hmm.
That's all their total is.
So those are raw numbers, right?
What's that?
Those are raw numbers of the people who died.
Yeah, well, based upon as best as we've got actual numbers.
But what that tells you is that there's a lot of infected people in the community who are not showing any symptoms or showing symptoms that are not serious enough to get to the hospital. So many people died already. So there is a backlog of people who are in the community.
Well, there's another consideration. In the United States, we have 330 million people, and we've had something under 90,000 die. Sweden, 10 million people, had 3,000 die. Sweden's numbers are more or less the same as ours per capita.
Per capita, yes.
So it's not that they're doing any better than we are, or at least for the moment, it doesn't appear that way.
Well, based on the information I have is in Sweden is deaths per million. In Sweden, the number is 319 per million, per million.
Per million or per 100,000? Usually the reporting is per 100,000.
No, it says deaths per million.
Oh, that's
It says 319 per million. In the United States, is 246 per million.
So Sweden, more people are dying in Sweden per capita.
No.
Per number basis.
Well, if the US is 240 something and Sweden is 319, Sweden's doing worse.
Right, correct.
Yes.
Okay.
We are actually, based on this article, we are actually doing better than 9 out of the 10 countries in Europe as far as deaths per million.
I mean, that one of the reasons is that we have the lockdown, we have the shelter in place, and hopefully flattening the curve.
Well, I mean, the other view is, and I guess Sweden, what I read was that Sweden is looking at it from the point of view is everybody eventually has got to get sick anyway. Let's have it happen now, because Sweden was in better shape hospital-wise than the United States, and then you have herd immunity.
One thing I don't know much about Sweden. I don't know what their population density is outside of the major city. They might have fewer people actually there. I don't know that.
I would think that they do, but I don't know that for a fact.
Because I don't know the number. Paul might know.
No.
No.
No idea. I think another thing is that I would really bet that the average healthiness of a Swede is much higher than that of the United States. We have a lot of people who are not very healthy at all. And as a matter of fact, we can see it in those people are the ones that are dying.
Mm-hmm. That's a good point there actually, because there are more people with diabetes, hypertension, obesity, all involved in or asthma actually, asthma and other respiratory COPD. All of them are high risk parameters for getting the infection and then getting into a critical phase.
Yeah, I was surprised at if you're elderly, you have a much higher rate, and anybody over 50 is elderly.
Yes, I mean,
I thought it was over 85.
We thought it was over 60, 65.
Yeah.
I heard 50 being the number.
Well, usually epidemiologists bunch the people in 60 to 70, depends on who is doing it. 65, 10-year intervals, 5-year intervals, and usually people will say beyond 50, that is true. That's when you look at the data, more people are getting infected who are more than 50 years of age. Then the infection rate increases for people who are more than 65 years of age. And
But
then
we don't know what the infection rate is because we don't know.
In the population here.
But we have no idea what that rate is. At best, 1% of the population has been tested.
Well, no, but you have a very valid point. But what people are projecting is based on the numbers that show up in the hospital. Those people who show up in the hospital and then they get tested, out of those people who are really showing up are more people in the older cohort of older age meaning beyond 50.
But again, that's the people who are sick and feel they can go to a hospital. You can have people who are infected and asymptomatic or relatively minor symptoms who never show up. You can have people who are homeless, dying on the street, who never go to the hospital because they feel like they can't.
I mean, that is one of the things that we cannot answer that, because right now testing is restricted to people who show symptoms, and then get tested.
I think the over 50 has much more to do with the death rate than the infection rate.
Yes, I would agree.
When they look at the people who died, under 49 was a small percentage compared with the over 50. That's what I meant.
No, but it's also, yes, that is true. But at the same time, what people are seeing is more people of older age show up in the hospital who are more than 50 years of age. Whether the actual rate has been calculated or not, that's a different issue. But this is what people have seen.
Right, and we know that that nursing homes have an inordinate percentage of people dying, and in many cases, the people never leave the nursing home, either because of cost or because the nursing home is hiding things, or whatever. I think, in part, one of the things that people are doing to scare everybody is to say, hey, this is going to kill a ton of people, and it will definitely kill a ton of people, but a lot of those people, as Paul was pointing out, already were sick of other things.
Yes, that is those risk factors in that age group. That's the problem.
I think the word is when they get the virus, it complicates their other problems to such extent that they can't fight it off, can't fight the other thing off. They get a virus and the weak heart becomes a heart attack and they die. The diabetes gets worse and they die. They die from basically diabetes, but they would have lasted longer if they didn't contract the virus.
Or they get pneumonia.
Huh?
They get pneumonia, which isn't specifically COVID, but it's a normal result.
Yes, one of the results of COVID is pneumonia, which is essentially not possible to treat. By that time, it's too late.
Yeah.
Unless you are a little younger, you can fight it off.
So getting back to the topic, should we be reopening and what will be the results? I think one of the things that people assume is if you reopen, then suddenly the world goes back to the way it was. But there's a significant portion of our economy that guaranteed will not be back, certainly not in the next year, maybe in 2 or 3, and that's tourism.
Yeah.
People coming in from Asia and from South America and from Europe, if they weren't so afraid of Trump, they probably would have put the United States on the do not fly list.
Well, it is also the case with Americans traveling abroad. it's a both-way situation. So tourism will be affected, hotel industry will be affected, and so entertainment industry, you have a problem. I mean, you have whole host of industries which will see the impact for a long time,
Yeah.
although we might open it up right now.
I take exception to that shot you made, Bob, about Trump. I think that's very disrespectful, personally.
Okay, well, I apologize to you.
One thing in the country of in Australia, I was hearing earlier today that Australia is essentially in what we would consider November, late fall,
Yes.
and they most recently have 11 deaths in the entire country. So that's very promising.
It may be, as I think Amuna was pointing out, the population densities may be such that it's not spreading as much. And if it's like New Zealand shut the place down almost immediately. One of the problems that the United States has had is we allowed things to percolate for a month or more before we started to take actions. And even the actions that we took weren't exactly universal. As a result, things for us look a heck of a lot worse. If you think about it, if you have a grease fire on your stove, if you put it out, if you use fire retardant immediately, it's a minor problem. Nobody even bothers to tell the neighbors about it. You let it go for a couple hours and now the house is burning and you got to call the fire department. If you don't call the fire department, then not only your house, but the neighbors start burning down. And I think more than anything else, that's what happened.
But using the same analogy, as long as you now have a simmering situation, you know that it's not burning, you should be able to get people back out in a controlled fashion, because that is what the population, the epidemiologists are looking at. As long as the curve has flattened to a certain degree, you know what the infection doubling rate is, and then accordingly you can institute certain parameters, certain guidelines for opening up the economy, because eventually the economy has to open. So while you still have this simmering fire, you can still keep the hoses pointed towards it so that it doesn't become a conflagration. But at the same time, have people move about in a controlled way. So that's what I think they need to do, and that's what I'm sure Governor Baker is chalking up a policy or guidelines for Massachusetts to do that.
Right, but understand something. The economy was never shut down. Today, we've got an unemployment rate of what, 25%? And let's assume that another 10% of the population can work from home one way or another. That's already 65% are still out there doing what they did more or less 2 months ago. So it's not like nuts. Huh?
Yeah, the unemployment rate is just about 15%, 14.7
Okay.
right now.
So
But
that's
it's
75% of the
fast.
people. Huh? I'm sorry.
The unemployment rate is 14.7% right now, but it's climbing very quickly.
Right.
And it's still climbing very quickly. It hasn't stopped.
But
It hasn't leveled off.
Right, but at the same time, there's still a ton of people out there doing the same thing they were doing before. The person who delivers my mail every day in the U.S. post office truck is still doing the same thing.
Well,
And
Yes, there's a large number of people are doing the same thing. There's also a large number of people that are working from home who are able to work from home. Those that can't work from home are in danger, and we are seeing them getting sick.
Right.
Not many, but but they are getting sick.
I mean, at
Well,
the
I
same,
mean,
yeah.
there are some like the meatpacking industry where it's really bad, but I think that's tends to be unusual. Most of the other manufacturing, we haven't heard anything about, so I'm assuming that they're muddling along without creating hotspots.
Well, you have to see that in Detroit, they have converted the plant to create ventilators, but they have set up the worker spaces based on the guidelines so that they don't infect each other. But in the meat plant, that people have talked about how it is impossible to have that guideline, to have the social distancing or physical distancing. And that's why you have a major problem in there. And you don't have people collecting the vegetables. So, and then you have a problem in the grocery store. And it's kind of escalating issues in the economy.
But again,
Actually, that's an issue I wanted to talk about. I was watching one of the reps from Texas, from that town that got attacked.
El Paso,
I'm sorry?
El Paso.
El Paso, yeah. The guy that was from El Paso. He was saying that we should increase SNAP, which is food stamps, greatly, especially for all the people that are unemployed. And we have a surplus of food that can't get delivered because they just can't deliver it. If they just deliver the food to the grocery stores and people had money to buy the groceries, then the farmers would be much happier because they wouldn't have to trash their entire crop. The truckers and the infrastructure would be fine. A trucker in a truck doesn't have much contact with any other person until he gets to the delivery. The grocery stores would get more, and the people would have money. People who are unemployed would have more money to spend on food. And right now, you see these huge lines of people getting, signing up for food for a week. And, it's just, it's just really, keeping them alive. So that's part of the infrastructure and economy that should be open and can be open and would be beneficial to be open. The farmers would sell their crop and pay taxes. The truckers would deliver and pay taxes, and the trucking companies would pay taxes. The grocery stores would be selling more because people have more money, and then again, they would be paying taxes. So, states would be better off and the government would be better off if they just did this. Instead, you have the Fed just lending money outside, lending money to billionaires and lending money to other countries. And it's money they don't have. They just create it. And so the value of the dollar is going down, and I've said that too much already. But I think increasing SNAP is a win-win situation for the economy.
Well, you realize that there's a lawsuit right now to tighten up the SNAP rules.
I know, it's insane, absolutely insane. They want to, they want to tighten up SNAP and they want to get rid of Social Security. I mean, they're insane.
Why,
There
why,
was talk about the SNAP being reductions before all of this happened. I haven't heard
Right, it
heard much
started in
about that
January.
recently.
I was just reading an article where there was a new appeal because the judge who was reviewing the case said, no, you can't do it now. And the administration, the Justice Department was saying, yes, it's still important to do.
so what would be the impact if they got rid of it or reduced it?
Then people would have less money to spend on food.
Also, that means
And
this,
oh, by the way, the grocery prices are going up significantly, not just meat,
yes, everything.
but vegetables, etc. So cut down on the amount of money that poor people, possibly people who used to be working until the economy was shut down, have to spend, and then increase the prices of what they need to buy. It doesn't sound to me like it's an intelligent use of resources.
But Paul's plan would help everybody, I would imagine.
Say again?
Paul's plan produced by Paul would help a lot of people and uplift the economy.
I tend to agree. It wouldn't hurt. The other thing that's really scary is I was watching TV the other night, and this guy was standing in front of a mountain of potatoes that he was going to put back into the ground because he couldn't sell them and he couldn't get rid of them. And Paul was talking about the food pantries throughout the country with miles of cars waiting to get in. Luckily, Burlington isn't in that bad condition compared to what it was 6 months ago. But even here, we have a lot of people showing up that never came before. And for the time being, there's enough food because they have some capital and they're buying stuff from the Greater Boston Food Bank. But what happens when Greater Boston Food Bank runs out of food? Because, as Paul was saying, people can't get it to them.
That supply chain. Supply chain has
safety. What happens when your kids are, instead of the announcement today was something like 20 or 30% of the kids don't have enough to eat?
Mm-hmm.
What happens when they're still hungry as opposed to when they're starting to starve?
Well,
there isn't enough food.
Actually, that's an interesting point. I don't know. I don't remember the number, but in Boston school system, they were saying that there is a substantial number of people who qualify for subsidized meals, and they depend on school breakfast and school lunch for their adequate nutrition. That's why they
all over the country.
Yeah, but in Boston itself, they were talking about that, how to create a distribution system for them. And it's kind of so sad, but that's the way it is, and throughout the country.
Well, in Burlington, the food pantry took over that role of providing that extra food for the kids. Now, unfortunately, it's not hot food, and it's once a week. You get a week's worth once a week. But even here, Reading is probably a little wealthier community than Burlington, but I don't think people think of Burlington as being a poor place where people are hungry. It appears that maybe that is true, that people are hungry, and it's not going to get any better. So if we reopen the economy, if Target opens up to sell nightgowns or shoes or work pants, is that going to change anything really?
Well, if you gave the example of Target, Target can sell online, and they are taking advantage of that. And that's what actually I heard in the news item, that they were actually telling people that they are open, but they are limiting the traffic so that they will have time to fill the orders.
Target's open anyways.
Yeah, right now also they are open, but they
They've been
again,
open right along.
they are their online system is also open now, and they were saying that how they limit the traffic so that the filling the orders is taking time. So what?
Yeah, they need to ramp up warehousing and order filling. Is something that, for the time being at least, hasn't really been automated, but is ripe for automation. And as they get incentive, they will start automating that, and things will go much faster.
So that means that gets you into the big question of, if you automated everything, what will the humans do? That's another issue which we can talk about another day, I guess. But today we can just open the economy. I mean, there are ways to do the opening the economy, as long as you do it safely and with adequate precautions, and open it in, as Governor Baker has actually indicated, he's trying to open it in phases so that he can, the Governor Cuomo also says that he can open the tap and then watch and then close the tap if the things clear up. But then again, they have to kind of make a judgment based on how many people got infected and how much economy is in the ruins. I don't know how. It's a very, I don't envy the Trump's position or governor's position at this time. It is a very tough position to have, tough job.
I haven't heard anybody anywhere say anything other than that they want to open safely.
Yeah, I mean,
everybody that I've heard in every state has preached that right along. So it's,
what about Wisconsin? The legislature sued the governor to get rid of all of their controls, and the Supreme Court just decided, yeah, the governor has no authority to
what type
keep
of control,
things open forever.
What type of controls you talking about?
Huh?
What type of controls you talking about?
Social distancing, shutting down everything but essential services.
Mm-hmm.
And there was, it happened, I think was it last night or the night before, that it was struck down. And today the bars were filled.
But it was state court, that
Supreme Court, yes.
Not Supreme Court US.
Right, but if it could happen in Wisconsin, if there was a Republican, I'm trying to think, is New Hampshire a Republican legislature?
Governor is a Republican.
I thought governor was Democratic.
No. Governor of New Hampshire, Republican.
Oh, okay.
Sununu is Republican.
Oh, right.
Sununu is the governor. Okay.
Yeah.
But
the younger,
let's take another state.
Sununu the younger.
Yes. The older one, I can remember the older one.
Yeah.
When I was younger.
When you were 10.
Not so much. I think everybody wants to go back to normal. Chuck, I totally agree with you. But A, what's normal? And B, is that really practical?
I don't think anybody really knows to what extent we can go back. I think we're going to have to find out and take extra precautions, and those people who are most in danger being anybody over the age, probably over the age of 60 or 65.
Does that mean I have to stay home for the rest of my life, however
No,
long
that
that may
means you
be?
have to make that decision whether or not you want to take that risk.
I suppose that's true and has always been true.
I mean,
Every
some
time,
people, some people won't do certain activities. Go rafting, as an example,
yeah,
because they're afraid of the risk. I mean, everything in life is a risk. You don't want to
true.
be foolish and do things where you know it's going to cost you your life. But we have a friend of ours who's climbs mountains all over the world, and he's fallen a few times and been badly hurt. But
Wow.
that's what he enjoys doing, and continues to do it.
True, and as long as you understand the risk to you and the risk to the people around you, then you got to make a decision. I agree with you totally.
Well, here there's a little extra problem is that not only you have the risk, but you become a risk to other people who are around you immediately.
Going back to Georgia for a moment, one of the things that when they decided they were going to reopen, one of the issues that a commentator brought up was if you reopen, then the people no longer are unemployed. They're no longer eligible for unemployment because the job is there. If they choose to go back, that's good. If they choose not to because of the risk to themselves or their families, then they turn down a job and they're no longer eligible for any benefits pretty much at that point. Is that a true choice? Is that something where somebody can decide that this is what I want to do as opposed to I got to do it? I got no choice. I have to feed my kids. So is that a fair choice? Is someone making the choice for you?
I think it used to be a fair choice when we didn't have the COVID-19 to worry about. But I don't think it's a fair choice now because, if before you could choose not to do it, and then if you chose not to work, then you probably didn't deserve anything. But right now, if you do go to work, you could die, and then where would your family be? So it's very different now than it was 4 months ago, 10 months ago, 10 months ago, in the middle of 2019.
Just hypothetically, what happens if they actually get whenever, if ever, they get a vaccine that they say works? There are a certain percentage of people that don't believe in vaccines. Should they be forced?
Right.
Should they be forced to have to take this vaccine?
We're doing
they
with that
shouldn't be
today.
forced.
What's
They
that?
shouldn't be forced to. Go ahead.
All I was saying was the measles issue. There are people who refuse to take the measles vaccine, and the result is that there's a rise in measles in the United States, which was almost gone a couple of years ago.
I don't think you should be forced if there is a vaccine, because you're only putting yourself in danger.
Well, back
Or
up.
the other people that refuse to take the vaccine, and that's their choice.
So that this person refuses to take the vaccine, they are possibly affecting those people who also didn't take the vaccine. Right? They could be endangering those people.
Well,
yes,
and there's some
but
people
that's
who
the
didn't
choice
take
that
the
they've
vaccine because
already
they
made.
can't. So Again, it's one of those issues where you think of it in terms of I'm willing to take the risk. Example that occurred to me a while ago. I'm in a foxhole with 3 other guys, and people are tossing mortars around. And I decide to stand up and wave my arms and yell and sing and say, yeah, you can't hit me. It's a choice that I choose to make. Unfortunately, what about the other 3 guys in the foxhole who are digging down as deep as they can because they're afraid they're going to have a mortar land on their head? They didn't get the opportunity to decide that.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what we're talking about here if you choose not
No,
to
it
take
isn't,
the
Bob.
vaccine. Why?
It isn't. That's not what he's saying. He's saying there are certain people who decide not to have the vaccine,
Right.
where everybody else has decided to have the vaccine. So if they get sick because they didn't have the vaccine, the only people they can infect are other people who didn't take the vaccine, who made that same choice. They're not going to infect anybody that took the vaccine, assuming the vaccine works.
But
Your
there's a certain,
example says there are 4 innocent people. One of them stands up and he can kill the other 3. He can be responsible for the other 3.
but we know that there's a certain number of people who cannot take a given vaccine.
There's a caveat to that. What Bob is actually, Bob, you're going to say that actually. What I was going to say. Keep talking.
No, it sounds better when you say it.
Oh, okay. No, let me say. I don't know what you were going to say. Now, let me say what I was going to say. There is a caveat to what Bob said, that there are certain number of people who cannot take the vaccine. There are children who are not given vaccine at the day. They are given vaccine according to a certain schedule. So before they receive the vaccine, they are vulnerable. There are people who are in certain age groups, they cannot get a vaccine. There are people who are immunocompromised that cannot be given vaccine. There are people who have allergies of certain things, cannot be given a certain vaccine. So you have kind of whole mix of these people who become vulnerable not because they chose not to get vaccinated, but because of the conditions they find themselves in. So what do you do about that? That's where Bob is, I think, pointing out. Is that right or no?
Yes, and I said, and I firmly believe it does sound better when you say it, Oman.
Oh, thank you. I am really exalted to the 9th cloud, actually. Well,
I will definitely agree with what you're saying, Omanan, and absolutely not agree with what you said, Bob, because it's a different situation.
yeah, but
I was just going to say, we only have a couple of minutes left.
Oh,
Should we reopen, and if so, should we reopen in the next couple of weeks? Should we wait till June or mid-June, July? What should we do in Massachusetts?
you have governor's phases. See that? Governor has come up with phased opening.
Right.
What we should do is see if we can get a hold of what the CDC recommended and do that. I think
part of it got posted this afternoon.
Yeah.
It's online as of this afternoon. Not all of it, but part of it.
Yeah. And I think, at least part of it should be good enough, and avoid the other stuff that's coming out of Washington. Avoid listening to them, because they're, they don't know what they're doing. They haven't done anything constructive. They still haven't implemented the DPA, the Defense Procurement Agency, the way it was supposed to be done. They still don't know how they were supposed to do it. They chose to let supply and demand take effect, as opposed to the president dictating companies to build things at a certain price, which is what the DPA expects the president to do. You know, the DPA, if the president did what the DPA was expecting him to do, we would be a hell of a lot better off right now.
But I thought when
So,
FDR,
the supply and demand rate that rose the price by a factor of 10 on some things, and it, and local companies were selling to foreign countries because they were paying more.
but I thought that when FDR invoked the this kind of provision, he did endorse the private companies making profit, and
Profits,
that was,
yes. Profits, yes. But that was also a dictated amount. They definitely should make their typical profit, but not 10 times their typical profit.
I don't
That's
remember the
counter.
number though, but you might be right. Bob would know this.
Yeah,
I can tell you that in a store in Billerica Center, they are selling individual toilet paper rolls for $3 a piece.
Was this somebody selling it out of his trunk?
No, it's a convenience store. It's actually a smoke shop that sells food and other things. So it's basically a convenience store, and they're advertising that they will sell you a roll of toilet paper for $3.
Well, convenience store prices are usually higher than
Okay.
regular store.
I'm talking about PPE, face masks that should cost less than $1 are selling for $8 to $10 a piece.
Yes.
We don't have the swabs to do the test. We don't have enough swabs. We don't have enough. You know, the ventilators, their price went up by a factor of 3. You know, it was just absolutely wrong, and it just infuriated me.
We have well, the PPE is a problem, but I don't know how quickly they can fix that. It is an ongoing issue. But there are more.
I do know that in the last not teleconference, the last press conference, one of the nurses standing up with Trump said she used the same face mask for a week.
Oh, that's not good.
And the way I understood it was face masks were supposed to be discarded after every patient encounter.
That's normal, but this is not normal right now. So.
Right. But obviously we don't have enough face masks. So we don't have enough tests. And even if we had enough tests, we can't process the damn things.
And building tests takes time. Processing tests takes time, unfortunately. It's kind of a capacity building, and that takes time and money.
And I understand that this caught everybody somewhat by surprise, but the federal government was aware, or at least portions of it were aware in January that there was a problem.
1 minute.
1 minute.
I've seen Dr. Fauci say back in January, middle of January, that this was not going to be a big issue in the United States. So everybody's got a part in this.
Well, we do know that people are being going before Congress and documenting the fact that they said, "Hey, we got to start getting ready," and nothing happened for well over a month, and now we're playing catch up. And where 1/4 of all the known cases of coronavirus in the world are in the United States. 1/4.
I haven't seen that statistic. I won't dispute it, but I haven't seen that statistic.
Just look at either CNN or MSNBC. They show it all the time.